Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies and citizens, this joy to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies and citizens, this joy to the world. I bring a message of the truth amidst a world full of lies. I graduated from learning lies to see the truth. Indoctrinated to be too blind to see the proof. I once was lost, but now I'm found, so I shine light. And everywhere I go is darkness, so I shine bright.
Woo! Leviathan, Behemoth, two massive beasts created by God to serve one purpose. Are they reptilian dinosaurs? Why were they created? Did God intend for mankind to be vegan? We'll look at all this and more on tonight's episode. And this is Uncommon Ground. As always, I'm WesBlaze, joined by my brilliant co-host and the firmamentalist, Sean. Thanks for joining me again, brother. How are you?
Hey, thanks, WesBlaze. It's good to be here. I'm doing great tonight. It's a nice, exciting topic. Talking about some crazy dragon-style dinosaur things. We're going to kind of define what they are, and we're going to see what God's purpose was for them. So it's pretty fascinating.
It's going to be another big show. I'm fired up for it. And I just want to say what's up to some people in the chat tonight. The prodigal son is here. Miss Pepper Moon, howdy, howdy. Wildly unpopular. Shalom, my love. Sharon Mayeran. TMC is here. Colin Crockett, what's happening, brother? Brad Moody. Robert Daniels. Lots of people in the chat tonight. It's another big one. Love Yaz here. Cover to cover with Jeremy Piers. The Lion Within Us. Jeremiah 15:16. El Beth. Lots of new names I'm seeing tonight. I'm encouraged by that. B Palms 88. Awesome. Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good night. In fact, we also just want to say thank you to some of our folks that leave us such encouraging messages. As every week, Wes, we get messages through either through Patreon or through our channel on the comment section. So you want this one?
They do, sure. Paul Nicholson Jr. a couple days ago says, thank you, Wes and Sean. It is these edifying and teaching videos of God's cosmological design of creations that has brought me to a deeper level of faith, which I never knew possible. God bless you, and thank you for being faithful stewards of the truth. Wow. It's rare that people just comment on our show, Sean, and say things like good show or thanks, I enjoyed that. They're detailed and they say these deep, encouraging, motivational things. I'm so grateful.
It is. In fact, everyone that's watching live right now, if you just go ahead and drop a comment, that also helps us get this word out to more people in the algorithms. So, well, we also had Yaakov Nathrim. He's telling us that, biblical cosmology definitely leads people to conversion and eventually salvation. It happened to me as well. Hey, that's a good one. Amen.
Well said, brother. Well said. I have a very similar testimony, as many of you may know. Thank you, Jacob.
I mean, where could the truth not lead but into the salvation provided by the Son of God, right?
If it is truly the truth, that's right. And if somebody has a genuine heart, they're led to the truth, the way, and the life. That's right. Kristen Dickinson says, Shalom from under the seven domes. I just want to say I admire the two of you. Wes and Sean, your dedication is unmatched. Praise Yah. I am very blessed by all of the work that the two of you do. Nearly 5 years into my awakening, and I thought that nothing could surprise me. And then I found WesBlaze and Sean. My mind is blown again with every episode, and in turn, my faith grows stronger. Thank you for being you. You're going to make me cry, Miss Kristen. Much love. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's sweet. And then the Good Life Journey, he's saying, very well done. I used to believe much of Revelation was just figurative, and I would never get a full understanding of it. Now I feel comfortable in my understanding, and it has increased my faith. Hallelujah. I agree with you, brother.
Yeah, that was in response to the Beast of the Pit episode.
Yeah.
Last episode
we
did.
We see that a lot, I think, don't we, Wes? Where people will say that, prophecy, sometimes they just want to make it figurative or metaphoric or poetry because they don't understand it. And when you try to say, okay, let's play that tape through, what does it represent? What is it figurative of? How does that story end? They never have the answers, right? Because once you start reinterpreting one piece of it, it throws off the whole story. So that's why piece by piece, we're trying to give it to you in context. We're trying to give it to you with lots of research according to the definitions of the words. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of the story, it all makes perfect sense. That's the goal.
That's right. Yep. And this is a biblical cosmology show, right? Discussing the creation model. Our goal from the start, one of our mission statements, is to be able to show how each individual constituent element of the creation model, everything God created, how it relays to how it plays out and how it's used in the overall plan of salvation. And so not every bit of this creation model we're talking about is necessarily, what's the word? Just inanimate, It's not necessarily a stationary, just unalive thing. So parts of it are the beings that he created, right? So I'm excited to get into it, but we did have something to go over first before we jumped into the presentation, right? Go ahead. What were you going to say about it?
I was just, we're announcing, guys, that we got the Uncommon Ground Teespring t-shirt store. Well, it's the apparel store. I mean, you can get more than just t-shirts, right?
Yeah. So far, I think I've only got a mug up there that's not apparel, but there will be more items coming, more designs coming. I look forward to adding to it and giving you guys some cool stuff to be able to rock in support of the show and conversation starters for the truth to get spread.
Absolutely, guys. I hope you guys enjoy this and check out the store. Links in the video description below.
The highly anticipated, much requested Uncommon Ground t-shirt now available to the masses. Check it out at the Teespring. The link will be in the description of the video when we're done. And I am so thankful to all the people that were a part of that, right? I asked for some people to send out some pictures of themselves wearing an Uncommon Ground shirt. So shout out to Miss Morgan, Carrie, Yeshua's Garden. Thank you, sir. The Haleys, Miss Tracy and Darren. Thank you guys and your kids. And everybody that helped out with that. Josh, thank you guys. Yep, got some a couple different shirts. I heard mixed reviews about the classic tee, so I went ahead and put there's a premium material t-shirt up there too, different brands of them, right? Some hoodies. It's hoodie weather, right? Getting into hoodie season, so those are available. And there should be a sticker and a mug. Maybe it's still updating. I just added that today. There it is. Oh, I can't hear you, Sean. Check. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a stickers over here in accessories.
Cool.
So there are stickers. I think someone in the crowd said they really like stickers. So, and then also if you want a mug, you got the mug. It's good.
Awesome.
In fact, Kingdom of Context, we have mugs as well, and I bought one of my own mugs. It's good. It's held up. I've had it for like 2.5 years. So
nice. From Teespring too, right?
Yeah, from Teespring. Yeah.
Master Soup says I've got 2 shirts, so I rep them a lot. That's what's up. Appreciate it. There was a couple other comments when we started off that I wanted to highlight and point out, at least that Tora Trey said, just finished dinner with the fam, waiting for a great show tonight. Been looking forward to this one. This seems like not very many people speak about this subject. Thank you, Miss Tora Trey. And Deep Holes also says he's taking 2 hours off work for this. Should be interesting. We appreciate you, Deep Holes. That means a lot, man.
Yeah, I think James is asking his wife wants to know if we do a ladies cut. I'm pretty sure I saw a ladies apparel on there.
There's at least one, women's shirt, women's cuts, like baby tee type style. I think maybe something like that. But I'll be adding more to it, so check it out. Stay tuned. Hope you see something you like.
All right, guys, as always, don't forget, we just want to say a big shout out to everyone that is supporting us both through PayPal or Patreon. Because it really does. It gives Wes the opportunity to have the polish that you see every week with these episodes. That takes a lot of work. So you're making it possible, and we just huge shout out. Wes is doing a lot. In the earlier episodes, I was helping him a lot, but I don't have as much time these days. So Wes has been doing most of it, and it's just he's a blessing. That's why I think the episodes are getting better and better personally, but maybe I'm just biased.
Well, I have heard from multiple people lately. It's been amazing just hearing, like, somebody will say almost every episode, that was the best episode yet. And so, like, if I keep hearing that, I know we're doing something right. And you're a huge help to the show, brother, too. I couldn't do it without you for now.
All right. And I think we just want to say, thank you for everyone that is doing that. So, and as always, we'd have extra bonus content on our Patreon. So if you end up becoming a Patreon member, it doesn't matter which tier you're a part of, you get access to extra bonus footage that we've been doing from our firmament project, which is right behind me right here, guys, where we're building an actual scalable scale size model of the firmament as we described and depicted in episode 1, right? Multi-layered, multi-firmament concept of creation. We're even going to include Sheol in there, so it's pretty awesome. So all those meetings that we're having and some of the updates that we're doing on that footage is going onto the Patreon. So thank you guys.
I appreciate everybody's support. Absolutely. If Patreon isn't necessarily your thing, you still want to support what we're doing. You want to see the firmament model come to fruition. There is a link for PayPal. Cashapp is on there as well. You also now have the Teespring channel and avenue to be able to support what we do. So thank you. I tried to make the prices real reasonable. I think I cut the suggested profit margin in about in half. So I just wanted people to be able to have access to represent. Much love.
All right, guys. Episode 21 tonight, Leviathan Behemoth.
Saw a couple comments on Facebook about this. People asking, what movie is this? What movie is this going to be for? I'm sorry. I wish the actual live stream looked as great as the trailers, guys, but I hope you get something out of what we're doing. We'll be putting forth a lot of information, lots of scriptures to go over tonight.
That's right. Excited for it. We've got so much information, guys. Probably should just jump right in, huh, Wes? Unless you got anything else you want to cover?
I'm ready with it. No, sir.
All right, brother. So this is Leviathan Behemoth. Do you want the first one?
Sure. Yeah, we're getting into the creation. So here's something a lot of people might miss in Genesis, whereas your translation might say sea creatures, which doesn't necessarily ring the same connotation. However, Genesis 1:20-23 says, "Then God said, let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures and let birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens. God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God said, God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. There was evening and there was morning, a fifth day." So all this that we just read was on the fifth day of creation, right? Firmament right above our heads on day 2. Day 3 and day 4, he's got the the sun, the moon, and the stars put in there. Day 5, apparently some sea monsters were created.
That's right. Yeah, I overlooked this for years, Wes. Yeah, this was a huge misunderstanding, or just like I overlooked the firmament in Genesis 1. It's amazing how much actually is explained to us in Genesis 1.
It really is. Yeah, there's so much layered in there that we can just glaze right over often if we're not really quite familiar with the verbiage, right? The terminology used, but there's some other supporting passages that we'll go into further detail. Oh, however, Genesis 1:21 there, in that word that was used for sea monsters, it's hatananim. Is that how you say that? Hatananim, something like that.
That's how I would stumble through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dragon, sea serpent, sea monster, dragon or dinosaur, sea or river monster, serpent, venomous snake. So it's got quite a few meanings in the definition there, but interesting no less.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then in Jubilees 2:11, it also says on the fifth day he created great sea monsters in the depths of the waters. For these were the first things of flesh that were created by his hands, the fish and everything that moves in the waters and everything that flies, the birds and all their kind.
Interesting. That sentence there where it says these were the first things of flesh created by his hands. I think we'll see something again tying back to the creatures of tonight's topic.
Yeah,
that relates to that sentence. To Baruch, the apocalypse of Baruch, scribe of Jeremiah, says in chapter 29:4, and Behemoth shall be revealed from his place, and Leviathan shall ascend from the sea, those two great monsters which I created on the 5th day of creation. There we go again. So, another confirmation of the 5th day, but ... at the end, dun dun dun. We'll come back to that verse. There's a conclusion statement that has to do with the fulfillment and the purpose of these guys. So we'll come back to this passage later.
There it is. And stick to the end, guys, because it's so relevant to the return of the Messiah. It's amazing. 2nd Ezra 6:47-48. Again, on the 5th day, you commanded the 7th part where the water was gathered to produce animals, birds and fish. The silent, the lifeless water, as it was commanded, brought forth animals so that peoples might recount your wonders. You kept 2 living creatures in reserve. One you named Behemoth, the second you named Leviathan. You separated them from each other, for the 7th part where the water was gathered couldn't contain them. You gave Behemoth one part of the land that had been tried on the 3rd day, where there are 1,000 mountains, so that he might live there. To Leviathan, however, you gave the watery 7th part.
All right. So Behemoth tied to a location of 1,000 mountains. I think we might see that again here later, but there's yet another confirming passage that the 5th day is when Behemoth and Leviathan were created.
That's right. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Let's get into this Leviathan chick.
So real quick, Wes, do you think Adam saw Behemoth and Leviathan? You think he named them? Because since all the animals were brought to him to be named?
That's an interesting point. Yeah, it would have to be. I think it's likely that he did at least.
Yeah, you think he started with the small ones first and has worked his way up to... Yeah, fascinating.
You never know. Job 41 is when we see some of the first mentions of Leviathan in the chronological order of the Protestant canon we have here. So it starts off saying, can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook or press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many supplications to you, or will he speak to you soft words? Will he make a covenant with you? Will you take him for a servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird, or will you bind him for your maidens? Will the traders bargain over him? Will they divide him among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with harpoons or his head with fishing spears? We'll come back to that. Will he be divided and traded amongst the merchants? We'll come back to that later on. Maybe look at another version of the scriptures of that passage. But Job 41 goes on to say, lay your hand on him. Remember battle. You will not do it again. Behold, your expectation is false. Will you be laid low even at the sight of him? No one is so fierce that he dares to arouse him. Who then is he that can stand before me? Who has given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole heaven is mine. I will not keep silence concerning his limbs, or his mighty strength, or his orderly frame. Who can strip off his outer armor? Who can come within his double mail? Who can open the doors of his face? Around his teeth there is terror. Is that saying like it's like chain mail, double mail? It's in the context of armor. He's got like double layers of scales, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, even though the inference for the metaphor being used is, old school military battle gear like chainmail, but with reptiles, it's their scales. And so, yeah, in fact, that's a very popular modern day bulletproof vest, as they call it, dragon scales. I don't know if you've ever seen that before or not, but
interesting. Yeah, it's layered protection.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that I love the part where it says, lay your hand on him, remember the battle, you will not do it again.
Yeah.
Because you will not be alive to do it again. That's right. It's pretty amazing.
That's a hot stove that he doesn't want us to touch. Will you go on with this, Job 41?
For sure. Job 41, 15-21 says, his strong scales are his pride, shut up as with a tight seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They clasp each other and cannot be separated. His sneezes flash forth light. His eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. Out of his nostrils smoke goes forth, and as from a boiling pot and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes forth from his mouth.
Is this where they get the idea of fire-breathing dragons from?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. That is a biblical concept.
Right. Yeah, and so much so that it's like it was kind of commonly understood back in the day, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, so like in the days that Job was writing this, you know, they didn't question like what he wrote. It wasn't just poetically embellished either. I mean, just like all the other descriptions, if you're going to try to say, oh, well, the sparks coming out of his mouth and his smoke goes forth like a boiling pot and burning rushes, like if you're going to say that fire didn't come out of his mouth, well, then how are you going to reinterpret then all the other descriptions of this beast that you just read for like 9-10 verses? You see what I mean? That's that hermeneutic problem where people run into a certain passage and they think, oh, I don't understand it. Can't be. Science said it's not true, so therefore I must reinterpret it. And you're like, hey, welcome to Uncommon Ground. Go check out episode 1. We talk about the firmament, just in case another thing that science says can't be. So welcome to the truth, guys. This is what the Father made. This actually isn't really that hard, but we're going to look at something a little bit later that Wes is prepared to explain from science how it's really not that hard.
Yeah, because I was trying to struggle with just trying to figure out how the combustion could happen. I realized there's flammable gases that could make it a reality that isn't far-fetched, you know, that nature contains these already. But how is he igniting it, right? I like that it says sparks of fire leap forth out of his, where was it? His sneezes. Was that the last slide?
Yes, I think it was up here.
I think I just saw it on the one we were just looking at, though.
Yeah, he sneezes, flash forth light.
There it is. Yeah, so like sparks come out. I wonder if he has to sneeze before it can be, you know, before he can trigger the fire breathing.
Yeah,
so that the combustion can happen.
And someone in the chat's asking about the passage where it says, "Out of his mouth go," it says, "and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning." So this is why usually the depictions are showing that his eyes are glowing. But from my understanding, like most snakes and like animals in the wild, their eyes actually are really shiny when you put light in them. And so it looks like, you know, like you see the animals, just his two eyes, you don't see the body at nighttime. It's pretty amazing how, I don't know how that works, but that would be my first natural understanding of that phrase. I don't think fire actually comes out of his eyes, but hey, I could be wrong.
Hey, yeah, very well could be. I'm not going to put it past our creator.
Right.
But something that's interesting is that, just the fire coming out. What was I going to say? Oh, his eyes. Yeah, there was some commentary I saw where somebody says his eyes are like brighter than 1,000 suns or something crazy. It's typical of animals that can see at night that they are able to. They have like a reflective nature to their eyes already. You can see them when you shine light on them. So he would be able to need to see through the dark if he was deep under the ocean. He would need to see to hunt his prey and whatnot. Like
a natural night vision eye, like a lot of animals do already have. So
there it was. That's what I was trying to say. You want to take this one too?
Sure. Job 41:22-28 says, "In his neck lodges strength, and dismay leaps before him. The folds of his flesh are joined together, firm on him and immovable. His heart is as hard as a stone, even as hard as a lower millstone. When he raises himself up, the mighty fear. Because of the crashing, they are bewildered. The sword that reaches him cannot avail, nor the spear, the dart or the javelin. He regards iron as straw, bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones are turned into stubble before him."
It's as if he was created, or this creature is created to survive any attack, right? To be reserved and preserved for a time in the future. He's not going to be able to be easily taken down.
That's right. Yeah, I think about modern technology. There's what they call tank busters, which are basically these high velocity metal javelin rods that are propelled at high velocity and that shoot through a tank, and they will shoot from one side to the other. And most of the modern tanks have like a compression seal on the inside, and as a result of the quickness of this thing flying through the side, walls of these tanks, it messes with the air compression inside of it and kills everybody real quick. And it's brutal, right? But that's a tank. And this claim here is that this animal, his scales the air can't even get through that. And, iron is like straw compared. So like, even if you had a javelin shot at high speed from a modern day projectile weapon from the military, it might not penetrate its scales.
Good grief. He's made of like diamond or something.
Right. It's crazy.
It is. Next verse. Job 41, 29 through 34 says, clubs are regarded as stubble. He laughs at the rattling of the javelin. His underparts are like sharp potsherds. He spreads out like a threshing sledge on the mire. He makes the depths boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a jar of ointment. Behind him, he makes a wake to shine. One would think the deep to be gray-haired. Nothing on earth is like him, one made without fear. He looks on everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride. Okay. I like that he just is able to generate heat, it seems. He's under the waters. He's able to make the water boil just by his presence, or out of his mouth, or from his face somehow, maybe. Yeah,
just recently how there was a part of the ocean was on fire, and then the military was throwing bombs at it.
Okay.
Did you know that? Did you see that part?
I didn't catch all that. I think I know what you're talking about. Where I saw a video of the ocean having a fire.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was.
They were trying to. I conflated a couple things. They were trying to put it out with water, which was a really weird scene to show that they're literally shooting water into the ocean to try to put out this fire. And then there were some mysterious underwater explosions that had happened. And so I've always wondered, because the government's never going to really tell you what's going on. And so I've just always wondered, like, did they, is he just running around? They would truly never tell us, right? So here, this is from like
this is what I thought you were talking about, but I didn't know.
Yeah. So the ocean is on fire, and they're trying to get as close as they can to actually put it out.
I think I see what he was talking about. The waters of the deep look gray-haired because it's all boiling and smoky. Maybe that's what he meant.
Yeah. So to me, that's just fascinating. I don't really know what the official. I think the official story. I don't remember what the official story was, but definitely wasn't Leviathan. But it just makes me think of, if you can turn the ocean if you can make it boil, well, what's going on there? And also, have you heard the theory that the underwater tubes for volcano lava could possibly be just Leviathan?
No, but we'll look at a verse here that could make some sense of that potentially being a theory.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm on that theory or not. I'm just saying that's what I heard, and I'm still kind of weighing it out. But yeah, I'm anxious to get through the rest of these two.
It is, yeah, right. Yeah, maybe that was Cthulhu or one of the other kaijus coming out. We'll see.
Right.
Godzilla. All right, so there's a clip here. Yeah, we were just talking about the science, right, of his anatomy. And there's some interesting things in this clip. If you'll roll that, please, sir.
Can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook, or press down his tongue with a cord? Nothing on earth is like him, one made without fear.
The most substantial description we find of this creature comes to us in Job 41. If you go read that passage, you'll notice how frequently and emphatically it is stated that this dragon is a fire breather.
Boys and girls, the Bible is talking about a creature that breathed fire. Now, people say to me, Mr. Ham, you don't really believe that. How can you trust the Bible, an animal that breathes fire? Hey, you know what? There's a little beetle in today's world called the bombardier beetle. And the bombardier beetle actually has twin cannons in its rear end, so when a frog comes up to eat it, it'll mix chemicals together and blast out fiery gases at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. I think the little beetle could do that. I think you could have a fire-breathing dragon, don't you?
What's going on here? Oh, no.
He just got wasted.
But could it really breathe flame?
And he fell off. That's great.
It's not a problem, as far as I can tell. It's not a problem that God could make an animal that can breathe fire. I mean, think of the other amazing creatures that God's created, like the bombardier beetle. In fact, most animals produce methane anyway, which is a flammable gas. If you just had a way to ignite it, you could do it. It's not a problem.
The pistol shrimp. By snapping its claws, it can not only make communication sounds, but something far deadlier. It deals a knockout blow from a distance by using its claw as a sonic weapon. First, its claw is cocked like a pistol, then fired.
Bang.
The effect is literally stunning. As the claw snaps shut, it fires a blast of bubbles. Incredibly, as the bubbles collapse, they momentarily reach the temperature of the sun.
What?
This implosion causes a shockwave that stuns.
Wild,
So-
right? The
Yeah,
pistol
that's-
shrimp is what that last one was. And it's so interesting. It's got, I guess, the muscles that it's blessed with and the shape of its claw or whatever. It cocks that thing open, slams it shut. And did you hear that? They said that the rushing of the air and the water molecules that it creates from that can temporarily, in a split instant of a second, I think, they say it reaches the temperature of the sun. So superheated.
Wait. When did they go to the sun to test the temperature?
I know.
I'm amazed.
Apparently really super hot. They could have just said that, but
I'm sure there's someone at home right now going spectrometers. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, no, they don't work like that. You can't just like that. We don't have like a meat thermometer just to point at the sun and be like, oh, it's 1 million Kelvin. No, it just doesn't work like that. That's clearly a conjecture. That's just a guess. But it does remind me of Star in a Jar. You remember that experiment?
yeah, sonoluminescence.
Yep. They said the same thing. At the moment the bubble collapses, it creates intense heat up to 1800 degrees.
Yep, that's right. And that is hot enough to create fire. And so now we can see that something God has created is capable of creating extreme temperatures. So it's not so far fetched.
That's right. When my stomach's bubbling, I know it's 1800 degrees in there.
The Macids, though. Maybe add some Leviathan filet or some Behemoth burger.
That's right. Yeah. Imagine how hot his acids are if what's coming out of his mouth. Or anyway, so we got more to talk about. More scriptures describe these characters, and one that's fascinating is this book that was not put in the American canon. It was put in the Armenian canon. Armenian canon. Yep, in 1667, it was put in there because they'd already had Syriac translations of it going all the way back to the 3rd century AD. Was the earliest copy, at least from my research. So they ended up putting in their canon as well, because a lot of people don't realize there's multiple canons from the different, Eastern Orthodox and regular Roman Catholic churches and all the different offshoots that are throughout the history. And the Catholic Church used to persecute the Armenians because they had different expressions of their faith as well as different books in their canon. So
that's right. And when we say that, guys, we're not talking about like other Bibles around the world, including like the Quran or the Books of Mormon or you name it. Right? There's literal other collections of books that include the books we're familiar with in our Christian Bibles, right? Genesis through Deuteronomy, the Law and the Prophets, the Psalms, and other Bibles around the world that contain those same books also contained something such as the Apocalypse of Abraham. Would you read this one, brother?
That's right, for sure. This is Apocalypse of Abraham 10, 8 through 12. I am called Joel by him who moves those who exist with me on the 7th expanse over the heavens. Guys, that word expanse means firmament. The power and virtue of the ineffable name that is dwelling in me. I am the one who has been given to restrain, according to his commandment, the threatening attacks of the living ones of the cherubs against one another, and to teach those who carry him the song of the 7th hour of the night of man. I am ordered to restrain the Leviathan, for every single attack and menace of every single reptile are subject to me. I am he who has been commissioned to loosen Hades and to destroy those who wonder at the dead.
That's right.
Wow.
So we get the name of, just FYI, this is the restrainer that Paul was mentioning in the Thessalonians. And it's an angel named Joel.
Yep, that is amazing. There's lots of different angels mentioned in Scripture. We get them, in the American canon, you only get what Gabriel and Michael mentioned, right? I don't think there's any others that are mentioned because Raphael's not mentioned, Uriel's
Right.
not mentioned,
No.
and then Joel. So those are mentioned in other books that have been in these other canons all this time. So it's
Correct.
just fascinating because they're all given a job. They all have a role to play in the creation, as we've been talking about in multiple episodes. Like back in, I think, episode 10, we talked about the sun and the moon.
Mhm.
Those, there's specific angels in the firmament, in the layers of the firmament above us, that are commissioned to make sure the sun, moon, and the stars keep going in the proper place as they make their circumference of the heaven over us. So similarly, this guy, this is his job.
Yeah, he's got a couple jobs, and one of them is played out in end times events as well, which correlates directly to. I almost included this in last week's episode, John, because if you go to the next slide, it says that he's commissioned to loosen Hades. So this
right.
would be the fifth trumpet angel that comes down with the key to the bottomless pit that opens up the pit for the beast to come out. So this is him.
Revelation 9:1. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's, this, to me, this is pretty amazing that this guy come down and he's to loosen Hades. Yeah. Anyway, we'll keep going. I don't want to get too sidetracked.
Same guy restrains Leviathan, but Apocalypse of Abraham 21:2-3 goes on to say, "And I saw beneath the surface of my feet, even beneath the sixth heaven firmament, and what was therein, and there the earth and its fruits, and what moved upon it, and its animate beings, and the power of its men, and the ungodliness of some of its souls, and the righteous deeds of other souls. And I saw the lower regions and the perdition therein, the abyss and its torments. And I saw the sea and its islands, its monsters and its fishes, and Leviathan and his dominion, his camping ground and his caves, and the world which lay above him, his movements, and the destructions of the world on his account." Sounds like earthquakes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and this is, it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to me, anyway. That because I don't believe the official narrative that's been given to us that we live on these tectonic plates, that is a part of a globe, and that those plates are shifting due to subterranean pressures and underground waters, as well as underground lava tunnels and things like that. That's not, from my understanding, it doesn't seem like the Father ever in Scripture describes tectonic plates. Have you ever seen those, Wes?
No, I can't say so.
Yeah.
I can't. No, I can't. At the same time, I also can't say that this guy is solely responsible. I keep saying guy. We'll find out later the Leviathan is actually a female, even though Job does say he, right? The pronoun that was used there could have either been translated, otherwise as a female. But this entity here, this Leviathan being, I'm not saying I don't believe he causes all the earthquakes, and I can't exactly pinpoint what necessarily does. I think there's a variety of factors, maybe, but it's also possible he causes a lot of them.
That's right. It's very possible that, and it seems to me that we're going to read some other scriptures. It seems to me that there are multiple things called Leviathans, or referenced as Leviathans, as these serpents in the sea, but only one massive one that we're going to see has relevance and correlation to Joel and also to the coming of the Lord.
Okay.
So I think I'm wondering if that word, because I see it in Psalms talking about the Leviathans in the sea, and I'm just wondering if it was either translated by the translator as a plural, or if it was just a common name for a sea serpent, not always referencing this massive sea serpent. Because these verses that we're providing tonight are very distinctive, that it's referencing this massive sea serpent that is underneath the earth, as it says here in the abysses. Yeah,
I'm not actually familiar with the passage where it uses it in a plural, so maybe we'll check that out later. It's all right.
So yeah, it's just interesting that if this guy's moving, or this female, the big Leviathan dragon sea serpent type thing is moving underneath down here. I love how the perspective of looking from the sixth firmament all the way down through the other ones, and then to the earth, and then underneath the ground, and then suddenly realizing that it's down there with the abysses. And that word perdition means destruction, right? The destruction there. Nothing really lives down there except spiritual things like unclean spirits that are forced to be there, or the angels guarding them. But it's not really a place where mankind can live, so therefore it's referred to as destruction, perdition.
That's right.
So
and hey, Chase Sepulvaldo says, why can't I super chat? I'm sorry, brother. I think we don't have that set up, I don't think, yet on my channel, but I'm going to make sure that there's links for you to, PayPal or Cashapp or whatever you prefer, so that you can check that in the description of the video as well. But we will look into setting up some super chats soon. Thank you.
All right.
What else do we have? So now that's about it for now on Leviathan. We'll get back into it more when we cover the purpose that they're created for, right? The end times implications of these creatures. But let's take a look at Behemoth, right? So a lot of people speculate that these creatures, both the Leviathan and Behemoth, must be some sort of dinosaurs, must be some sort of reptilian creatures in that sense, or that they must be. I've heard hippopotamus, I've heard elephant, I've heard crocodiles, I've heard all kinds of things. But we'll get into a reason why it couldn't be any of those animals I just listed. However, Genesis 1:24 says, "Then God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth and their kind, after their kind. And it was so." So that word cattle, if you go to the next slide, is livestock, and maybe in other translations. But if you look there at the Hebrew word that was used to translate it is behemoth. And it means beast, cattle, animal, beasts, call of all animals, cattle, livestock, domesticated animals, wild beasts. So I think there's a focus there on bovine type creatures, cattle,
That's right.
livestock. Seems to be prominent there in the definition for behemoth.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very big correlation to this type of animal, what it is. Very different from the Leviathan. So here in Psalm 50, verse 10, it says, "For every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills."
All right.
So this is something that Wes has brought up because of the previous verse. And I always wondered if this was a reference to the kingdom of heaven above and the multiple places where the thousands of hills, that the different layers of firmament that host, or that are the home to the angels, or even possibly 1,000 hills within the garden that was retracted into the firmament, as we've talked about. But it's possible it could be referring to this other passage, right, where we read about where the behemoth was placed.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think we'll even look at a passage that could lend to those ideas that you were just talking about here in a little while. But we did see in 2nd Esdras 6 when we read about the behemoth, and I mentioned that we'll see this again later. It was in 2nd Esdras 6 that the behemoth is on 1,000 mountains. It used the word mountains in that passage. So 1,000 hills, 1,000 mountains. Have to imagine it's the same, understanding. Trying to be conveyed here.
I think this is what our brother Ken Heiderbrecht, bringing his words. I think this is why he was theorizing, if this reference to the 1,000 hills is in the Garden of Eden, then it would mean that the behemoth is actually still above us in the third layer of the firmament right now in that garden.
Possible.
But it's possible. My only thought was, what I brought up to him when he considered that was, Jubilees tells us all the animals were kicked out when Adam and Eve were kicked out in Jubilees chapter 3,
it does.
327. So I don't know.
Could this be an exception? I think we'll look at Enoch 58/60, depending on the translation. And then I found an interesting commentary note on Duduane, or however you say that.
Yeah, Enoch. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll look at that here in a little while. But 2nd Esdras 6, as we see, we read this earlier, 1,000 mountains, so that he might live there, regarding behemoth.
Nice.
But we got a clip here, a little bit of comedic relief. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's look at something about some behemoth. Shalom, everybody in the chat.
And
Thank y'all for being here.
Behemoth.
Behemoth? What do you think he meant by that?
Behemoth is a dinosaur He eats grass, has an ox, his tail's like a cedar. His smoke are strong as bars of iron. He's deep in the ways of God. Could Behemoth be a dinosaur, a mighty
No.
I don't know. I'm just not really feeling the Spirit's leading on this one. I don't think it's God's will.
But what is the creature Behemoth described immediately next to Leviathan? Some creationists are strongly convinced that Behemoth was a sauropod dinosaur like a brachiosaurus still loitering around in Job's day.
And there's even indication in the Bible of a dinosaur that lived beside a man after the flood. Go and read the book of Job, Job chapter 40, verse 15. Behemoth, the largest land animal God made. The description fits something like a sauropod dinosaur living with Job after
that flies. OMG!
There are several reasons why we can safely say that Behemoth wasn't a dinosaur. To begin with, as any first-year Hebrew student will surely recognize, the name Behemoth is etymologically built on a run-of-the-mill Hebrew word frequently used for cattle, Behemoth. Bernard F. Bateau, a Hebraist at DePaul University who has specialized on the ancient Near Eastern context of Behemoth, has pointed out that if anything, linguistically the connotation therefore suggests that this is a sort of super ox. Second, there is also nothing whatsoever in the passage that describes him as reptilian, something we would reasonably expect if this were a Brachiosaurus. Third, what's most notable about a sauropod like Brachiosaurus? That its neck is 85 feet long. Its entire biomorphology is framed around feeding from the tops of trees. If the author of Job was bragging about a sauropod's features and amazing physical capacity, you would think he would have mentioned these distinctions other than the pitiful line, "He feeds on grass like an ox." Expecting the Job author to omit the business about its 9 stories of neck seems about as unlikely as me bragging about a giraffe's features and forgetting to mention its neck.
This thing doesn't live in a swamp.
This thing's got, what, a 25 to 27 foot neck? Brachiosaurus 30.
Ah, humans! Get them away!
I don't get it. Behemoth.
Who knows what the man saw?
And these are all going to be lean cuts, and they're all for quick cooking, are they?
Yeah, that's right.
Because when you look at this, you can't help thinking of lunch.
Hope y'all enjoyed that. Super cow on a scotty. Throwback. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, that made me hungry.
Yes, sir. Good stuff. Good stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of chat going on about dinosaurs in the chat. I don't know that we'll cover a whole lot. Maybe you'd be interested for us to speak on more about the concept of dinosaurs. I'll put this out there. I'll say that by definition, well, first, the etymology of the word means terrible lizard, and so would very much imply a lizard-like reptilian creature. But the other thing is that by definition, when scientists of today bring up dinosaurs, they're referring to a class or a species of creature that lived 65 million to 300 whatever million years ago, which we would propose is not even true. That there isn't that long of a time span going on since creation. But so yeah, that's all I really have to say about the dinosaur topic. I'll just put it out there that these creatures, neither one would be reptilian lizards, and we'll see why here shortly.
That's right. That's right. And we've got Job up again, trying to give us some description on Behemoth. You want this one?
Sure. So Job 40, starting at verse 15, says, "Behold now Behemoth, which I made as well as you." Real quick, shout out Spencer Murphy. Good to see you in the chat tonight, brother. "Behemoth, which I made as well as you. He eats grass like an ox. Behold now, his strength is in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. He bends his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together." All right. He is the first of the ways of God. We'll look at some other translations of that verse here in a little bit, but let his maker bring near his sword. Surely the mountains bring him food, and all the beasts of the field play there. Under the lotus plants he lies down, in the coverts of the reeds and the marsh. Remember that phrase that he dwells in the reeds as his dwelling place. Remember that, because we'll check out something else that's interesting about that.
Yeah, for sure. So there's this is the famous passage here in Job 40, verse 17. He bends his tail like a cedar. So this is where a lot of people have tried to like insert the idea of, it must be like a brontosaurus or a sauropod, right? But it's not described like that at all. And
it's not. Especially since, like we saw in the video, the guy mentioned and pointed out that if he were, a sauropod, Brachiosaurus, Apatosaurus type of creature with the super long necks, that's designed for eating, trees, eating leaves off the tops of high trees, whereas eating grass like an ox isn't convenient for something with a super long neck. So, yeah. But
Master Soup saying it's a water buffalo. And it just makes me want to sing that song from VeggieTales. Everybody's got a water buffalo. So anyway.
I remember that. Throwback back in the day. Yes, sir. Yeah. And so people would say, well, a bovine type of creature might not have a tail that like a cedar. It depends depending on how big it is, it still could. So if you can picture a
Yeah, I was
cow
about
like,
to say.
go ahead.
Yeah, it's about cows. I mean, cows got that little tail that comes off the back of them. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's not a reptilian style tail, but it's cord like. It's like a thick rope.
Mhm.
So now you magnify that to the point of what behemoth's being described as, and yeah, that's a cedar tree. Easy.
Very much so. It could be. But first in the ways of God, he lives in the reeds. The lotus plants cover him with shade. The willows of the brook surround him. If a river rages, he is not alarmed. He is confident, though the Jordan rushes to his mouth. Can anyone capture him when he is on watch with barbs? Can anyone pierce his nose? So that line of the Jordan rushes to his mouth, that to me paints a picture of how big this creature must be if he's able to basically drink up a river. Yeah. That's the picture painted for me.
Yeah, this is pretty fascinating. Huge descriptions here in Job 40, verse 19 in the ESV. It says, he is the first of the works of God. Let him who made him bring near his sword.
So that ties back to Jubilees 2:11 that we read earlier, where it says that these were the first fleshly creatures created.
That's right.
That's interesting. What does the Septuagint say?
And then that Septuagint, even though the verses don't line up, that's what's up with the Septuagint. Some of the verses are off, but it's the same information, just kind of like sometimes there's more of it, sometimes there's less. It's a different translation. Job 40, verse 14, in the Septuagint says, this is the chief of the creation of the Lord, made to be sported by his angel.
That's right. Yeah. So the translation you might have most often of the Septuagint, maybe the Brenton Septuagint, would say played with by his angels. But yeah, it would make sense. Sported sounds more, accurate to the storyline, as we'll find out, because played with kind of sounds like it's a pet and they're just hanging out and having fun with this guy. But no, not quite.
Yeah, it's the interesting English decision by translators with this word play, because in this passage, sported makes more sense because Behemoth gets hunted down. But then why would you translate that to play? I don't know. Is that an ancient cultural concept for hunting, is to play in the field? I don't know. But then also in Exodus 32, it talks about the people that were in rebellion, worshiping Baal, that eaten their sacrifice and their meal, and then they got up to play. And that word in the Hebrew translates from sexual misconduct, sexual carousing. And so I wouldn't describe that as playing either, right? Unless
no, I don't think that's what the angels and Behemoth are doing.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like the choice of the English translators in both occasions to choose concepts that I would never associate in the English language with the word play. So it's just weird how they made those decisions. But this is the kind of stuff, when you're researching these topics, you have to go in and check other translations. You got to check the definition of the words. That's why we're putting these on screen for you. This helps you figure out this stuff on your own.
Great segue to the question in the chat. Is it Urena best Bible translation when looking for this beast? Looking for these beasts? All of them. Yeah. Check out all of them. Do a parallel. Bible Hub is a great tool. BibleHub.com. You can parallel look at all these translations that they have available on there and just see what they all say. Compare them. Some translations might be, worse than others, but there's no such thing as a perfect translation. So enjoy what you got there.
For sure.
Job 40. Sure. Verse 21 in the New American Standard says, he lies down under the lotus plants in the hiding place of the reeds in the marsh. I pointed that out when we were reading through it because Psalm 68, verse 30 says, rebuke the beasts in the reeds, the herd of bulls with the calves of the people. So the only other mention of a type of creature, types of beasts that live in the reeds in scripture is bulls and calves.
It's true. Yeah.
Had to throw that connection in there.
Yeah. And also the ox, right? Which is just a variant Asiatic version of a bull. So it's the same concept. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yes, sir.
Oh, looks like an interesting ride.
Yeah. Canada's Wonderland. Shout out Ken Heiderbrecht up in Canada. Maybe he's been here. I want to say that I've even been to a theme park that had the Leviathan and Behemoth roller coasters. Was it, put in the chat if you guys are familiar. Is it Universal Studios, Florida? Maybe it was a Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. I'm not positive, but I've been on these and seen these roller coasters, just not the one in Canada. But here's the Leviathan one. If you'll go to the next slide.
Yeah, talk about bubble guts.
Yeah. There's a behemoth one too, right? So it's usually paired together. At the theme park I went to, there was they were right next to each other. You get in one line and then you split off, which depending on which one you wanted to go on. And they made a big deal about their mascots. So if you look at the next one, the mascots that they chose, I thought was interesting because behemoth, they chose this scary looking nonetheless, but an ox type steer looking bovine creature.
Yeah,
be the representative of behemoth.
And look, he's got chains on his appendages.
Okay.
You see that? You see the chains hanging off of his hands?
Sure.
Like he's chained up. It's interesting.
Huh. Some more t-shirts that they had in their stores and stuff, the Canada Wonderland swag merchandise store that they had, and they choose the same animal to represent the behemoth there.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Canada's Wonderland.
That's some more artwork representing I think it's fan art or something from the same roller coasters though. Another bull guy there. It's more like a minotaur in that one, right?
It does. It looks more like that. And look, now the bonds and the chains are on the Leviathan too.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. All right.
It is.
They can't just leave the theme park alone.
Would you read this?
Sure, brother. Psalm 104, 24 through 26. O Lord, how manifold are your works. In wisdom you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Yonder is the sea, great and wide. Creeping things innumerable are there. Living things both small and great. There go the ships, and Leviathan that you formed to sport in it.
There it is.
Yeah, this is actually the passage that I was thinking of. I think that has some of the translations as a plural.
Really?
Yeah, but either way, it's fine. So
right.
because it's talking about the sea, and this is where I was thinking, oh, people have seen large sea serpents, but at the same time, not anything this large, right? Not anything the size of Leviathan as described in Job and in all these other passages.
That's right. And I think I failed to include it tonight. We had so much already, but there was one commentary I looked at where a guy said that supposedly the Leviathan has horns, and on his horn it was written something to the effect of "I am 300 miles long." So that was just commentary, and this is rabbinic style Haggadic literature. But what if that were true? 300 miles long. That'd be wild.
Hey, think about the dimensions of the New Jerusalem. Well, I'll just remind me to come back to that in a minute.
Okay. All right. Good.
All right. Oh, here we go.
Isaiah 27:1. All right. So in that day, what day? We're going to say the day of the Lord. The Lord will punish Leviathan, the flaying serpent, with his fierce and great and mighty sword, even Leviathan, the twisting serpent, and he will kill the dragon who lives in the sea. So here's a mention of it conflated with the idea, correlated, I should say, with an idea of a dragon, right?
That's right.
Sea serpent, Leviathan. And this is a later, wouldn't you say, Sean? It's a later interpretation or translation to use the word from the Latin drakon, or was it Greek drakon?
Yeah, when they talk about dragons, and because dragon wasn't even a word that was used. Excuse me, dinosaur was the word that replaced dragon up until like the 1850s. All mentions of large reptiles were just referred to as dragons, then that's still in modern day. It's still where we get that small reptile, the Komodo dragon, is still called a dragon, right? Mm-hmm. But all the various sizes of serpents in anthropology and archaeology, they would refer to them as dragons up to like the mid 1800s. And then this idea of dinosaurs and evolution came out.
Yeah. They sure did. They they piggybacked off of Charles Darwin theory of evolution that he put forth by presenting this concept of dinosaurs. And I really felt like they blended deception with truth. Yeah. And they just stacked up these lies on top of each other to reinforce their narrative of millions of years and billions of years of microevolutionary creation. But these creatures we're looking at tonight, they don't fit in with that story very well.
They don't. Every time I hear that, man, I just think someone should make a good trap beat with billions and billions, billions and billions, and just right. You can hear that in the background just fading out as the beat comes in. That would be hilarious. And then someone's dressed up like Carl Sagan trying to dance all nerdy like. That would be pretty amazing. Pretty amazing track right there.
Hey, this is one I wanted to ask you about, actually, and I wasn't super positive, but I found this to be interesting. You want to read it, and we'll talk about
Okay.
it?
This is Habakkuk 2:17 in the ISV. It says, "Indeed, the violence done to Lebanon will overtake you, and the destruction of the beasts will terrorize you, because you shed human blood and did violence to the land, to the city, and to all who live in it. For the violence done to Lebanon shall cover you, and the destruction of the beasts which made them afraid, because of men's blood, and for the violence done to the land, to the city, and to all that dwell therein." Interesting.
So yeah, Strong's number 929. The word for beasts there is behemoth, and I know that that's also a word that can refer to just cattle and regular animals of the farm, basically, or something thereof. But this seemed to be an end times prophecy when I was looking at Habakkuk 2. Are you very familiar? He's given a vision, and he's saying,
I know Habakkuk 3. I would definitely say Habakkuk 3. Let me jump back in Habakkuk 2 real quick.
Yeah.
Take a quick look, because if this should say behemoth and it's just been translated loosely to English to say beasts, that would be interesting, right?
Yeah, it is the case, but is it referring to the behemoth that we're on the topic of tonight? I thought it was possible, especially because he says he's given a vision and that it would something about it would go carry over into the end. The vision would, so it seemed as if it was prophecy of end times to me. And you're saying Habakkuk 3 definitely is? Well, then.
Well, oh yeah, that's right, because Habakkuk 2:14, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, and as the waters cover the sea. I've always thought that was millennial reign in time reference. Yeah, and then verse 17 right after. So, and then verse 9, I believe. No. It's woe to the Babylonians, the Chaldeans. And then, okay. I mean, there is a lot of language in here, even all the way back up to verse 3 and verse 5 he gathers all the nations to himself and collects all the peoples as his own. So I would put this in end times, day of the Lord context.
Okay. So the beasts that are being referred to here could be the Leviathan and Behemoth, or Behemoth specifically in that passage.
Yeah, and that would be interesting, because I mean, are we really to say that, the local cattle is causing people to be afraid and like it's terrified because we saw a bunch of cattle and sheep and oxen get killed,
Yeah.
But I don't know. It seems to me if you're saying the destruction of the behemoth, which made them afraid because of men's blood for the violence done to the land, that would make a lot more sense.
It does. Yep. And so you could even interpret that in two different ways, potentially, that the destruction of them, right? We've already read that the Leviathan will be slain, basically, and that these creatures are going to be killed. And so the destruction of them in that sense, but it could also refer to destruction that they cause, because we read in Apocalypse of Abraham that, Leviathan causes destructions of the world on his movements. And so if when they come out and are, they're reserved for until the last day. So when that event happens, could they create destruction? That could be what this is referring to.
Right.
Those are two ways I was looking at it.
I've always thought that when they actually come out, I think this is a part of the worldwide earthquake that's already happening, is they're also moving and come out, just like the Apocalypse of Abraham talks about earthquakes being caused by Leviathan. So I think that whenever these guys reveal themselves, there's some issues. Because I mean, if they're this big, then I could see Behemoth running across the land causing some tremors.
Yeah, especially if they fight each other, which that reminds me, stay tuned to the end. We got a fun premise to base that off of. I meant to mention this earlier. We're going to announce a giveaway. I got a giveaway idea in mind, so stay tuned till the end of the episode for the instructions and details on how to enter into that sweepstakes.
Yes.
But good verse, brother. What else we got? Isaiah 51:9 says, "Awake, awake," in the NASB. "Put on strength, O arm of the Lord." Arm of the Lord. Isn't that usually a reference to Messiah?
Usually.
Awake as in the days of old, the generations of long ago. Was it not you who cut Rahab in pieces, who pierced the dragon? The Christian Standard Bible says, wake up, arm of the Lord, clothe yourself with strength. Wake up as in days past, as in generations long ago. Wasn't it you who hacked Rahab to pieces and you pierced the sea monster? So I thought this was interesting too, because I've never heard anybody talk about these verses in reference to Leviathan and Behemoth. But it turns out, if you'll go to the next slide, Sean,
Yeah, that's
that
interesting.
Rahab isn't only a word that can refer to Egypt, which is it is known to be an emblematic name of Egypt. We see it spoken of with this word. Rahab is also the name of was it a prophetess?
Yeah, in city of Jericho in Joshua chapter 3, Rahab, the prostitute that helped the Israelites.
That's right. Yeah, so it means breadth, storm, arrogance, but only as names. And I think it's interesting that it says arrogance, because in another definition or another commentary on this Hebrew word, it said proud one. Right? All right, 41. So there you go. So mythical sea monster is another definition for this word, apparently.
Yeah,
so
interesting.
What if that's her name?
Rahab. Yeah. Interesting.
Or maybe Leviathan is the name, and this is just a nickname for it. But I seem to think I'd lean towards this passage referring to a mythical sea monster of sorts. Not so mythical, actually.
Yeah, that's wild, because I mean, we know the story is that the Lord does now, from the inference of the idiom that the arm of the Lord always refers to the Messiah, would start to put this into conflicting territory, where we have an angel that is designed, that has been dedicated and commissioned to stop and release and basically manage this large Leviathan character, whereas the arm of the Lord also can just refer to his power.
Yeah, it was somebody working in the power and authority of the Father, huh?
Yeah. So it could be Michael or Gabriel or Joel or whatever.
Yeah, you're right. This is you on this one.
Psalm 89:10 says, "You crushed the monster Rahab, and with your powerful arm you scattered your enemies." And then that was in the
Common English version.
Common English version. So down in the New Living Translation, it says, "You crushed the great sea monster. You scattered your enemies with your mighty arm." Interesting. And then the Septuagint says, "You have brought down the proud as one that is slain, and with the arm of your power you have scattered your enemies." So yeah, between the Septuagint and the other translations, we have that idea of that continuity idea of this thing possibly being referred to as proud.
Yeah, that's right. The Septuagint translated as that. So yeah, more than likely this would be in reference to the same monster, right? We get the looking like Joel here with a fiery sword, going up against the sea serpent.
And just so people understand, on the day of the Lord, when this thing is destroyed, the enemies of Yahweh are scattered by Yeshua and the angels that come back to fight them. So they 2nd Ezra chapter 13 talks about they turn on themselves and they try to flee, and because they see Yeshua coming down with the angels, and they try to get out of there, right? And so he does scatter his enemies, and this is why the angels have to chase everybody down all throughout the land and separate the wicked from the righteous.
And I'd imagine if these massive beast creatures, Godzilla, whatever, are coming out and trampling around, then that's going to scatter some people as well. That would probably be the case.
Yes, man, what a wild movie to live through.
I know, it would be a big day. Sean said this was his favorite slide.
Yeah, this is a great little image here. For the people surviving the day of the Lord, trying to make their way to the city of light in the far distance, because you live on a flat plane, the circular plane of the earth. You don't live on a ball, so therefore you could see the city of the Lord that's coming down through the sky. And here it is. You're still trying to make your way from the furthest, like say you're in California, trying to make your way over to Jerusalem, and you run into this thing when you get to like Turkey or whatever, so that would be wild. Or it just could be, right there on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea on Israel, right near Tel Aviv or whatever. Right when you get off the boat, you just see this thing there, and there's a whole bunch of angels on the other side of that rock on the right that are just chopping it up. I
just picture a bunch of angel priests with their chef hat looking thing, right? And they're dividing it among the merchants or something like that.
That'd be hilarious.
Sharing it with the Ethiopians and the Phoenicians.
Yes, that too. So this is Testament of Asher. You want this one?
Yeah, I found this one, just doing a word search, keyword searches in a lot of these other books, right? But Testament Asher in the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, Asher says, "Become not my children as Sodom, which sinned against the angels of the Lord and perish forever. For I know that you will sin and be delivered into the hands of your enemies, and your land will be made desolate, and your holy places destroyed, and you will be scattered unto the four corners of the earth, and you will be set at naught in the dispersion, vanishing away as water, until the Most High shall visit the earth, coming himself, and breaking the head of the dragon in the water. He will save Israel and all the Gentiles. So that was a parenthetical statement, right? When you got those brackets. And so sometimes when you see those brackets from, R.H. Charles, who translated the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, sometimes when you see those brackets, it's completely translator insertions, their own commentary. But other times, Sean, isn't it true that there would have been maybe broken fragments of the text that they were trying to put together, and because they had to do some guesswork, they put those brackets?
Yeah, it's called emendentation. It's a literary term for translation that if he's got multiple different language manuscripts he's working off of, and then you would have fragments of each, then they just try to fill in from the context the best they can the rest of the sentence. And so sometimes R.H. Charles would put those in brackets and other times in parentheses, but usually the parentheses, and this is where with the Testament 12 Patriarchs I've actually had a hard time finding the actual key, the legend that would tell you whether the bracket or the parentheses is the emendentation, or is the language, or is the text inserted from another language that he's just combining together, like he does with the Book of Enoch. That there's an actual key, there's a legend at the beginning of the Book of Enoch that explains the meaning of the symbols that you see inside the translation. So we don't get that with the Testament 12 Patriarchs, unfortunately. And so either way, this is consistent with everything we've been reading, which is the idea on the day of the Lord, when he saves all of Israel and the Gentiles, he saves them from utter destruction of the world, from Satan, the false prophet, and the beast. He also destroys the Leviathan,
which would be a dragon in the water.
That's right.
Yeah. Very good.
It's pretty amazing.
Psalm
40. Yeah, that's a good one. Testament of Asher. And then Psalm 74, 13 through 14, the NSB, it says, "You divided the sea by your strength. You broke the heads of the sea monsters in the waters. You crushed the heads of Leviathan. You gave them as food for the creatures of the wilderness." Aha, interesting. And then the Septuagint goes down here and it says, "You did establish the sea in your might. You did break to pieces the heads of the dragons in the water. You did break to pieces the heads of the dragon. You did give him for meat to the Ethiopian nations."
And that's a song, right? Written in song form. That's maybe why it repeats itself like that.
Possible.
It's like the hook maybe of the song, the chorus there. That's awesome. So this was the verse I thought you were referring to when you said something about a verse mentioning a plurality of Leviathans. I never saw that in my studies, but I did see this, which lends to the idea that if there are plural heads, then that reminds me of the what is that creature in Greek?
King Kong. Oh, you mean in the Greek?
In the Hydra is what I was thinking of. Is Leviathan maybe a multi-headed sea serpent?
It's possible. I mean, who knows? But
this was the only passage that I saw that gives credence to that idea. But if it does have more than one head, it's interesting. It would lend to the idea of
Gadara is the name of this three-headed sea monster serpent type dragon that's in the King Kong movies, and that's the one that's like one of the hardest things for King Kong to defeat. Anyway, obviously that's modern day cinema lore, but it's fascinating because they pull these ideas from somewhere. So
they do. When we see Hercules in the Hydra, right? We also see that Thor fights a sea serpent named Jormungandr or something to that effect. There's that. Yeah. And then there was Arabic legend has Behemoth and Levitu or something of that nature. And they flipped it around where Behemoth is the serpent, and then Leviathan basically is this. It is a steer in their legend and their fable that they have about it. So it's they just mix the names opposite, but they do have a cow-like creature that they speak of when they're talking about that. There's multiples of them. Even in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's mentioned that there's a calf of El, right? So this was permeated throughout all cultures and legends. That these are things that cultures talked about.
Someone in the chat brought up an interesting thought earlier about Adam named these creatures. And the scriptures tell us in Genesis 2 that the creatures were brought to him, male and female.
Yeah.
Is it possible that the multiple here in Psalm 74 in the Septuagint, the multiple concept of the plural dragons is a male and a female? And that could be why First Enoch calls him a female. In other passages, it seems they translated the Greek, which is a very, the Greek plural pronoun for he and she is the same word in the Greek, also for it and they. And so it really depends on the translator's understanding of the context for which pronoun he uses. So that's where that could be. Well, I've always thought it was just him making an assumption to call it a him, because most modern day translators don't read, or they don't compare the book of First Enoch to the modern canon in America.
Right.
So they would never look back and look at the Leviathan being called a female. But what do you think, Wes?
Yeah, we'll get to Enoch here in a minute. Second Ezra 6 seemed to be pretty, I don't know, it locked in the idea for me that there's only one of each of these creatures, the big ones at least. I mean, I don't gather that there's multiples of them. However, it could be. But yeah, when it just says that Leviathan was given the seventh part of the water, it makes this distinction as if they're so big that they couldn't dwell in the same place at once.
Right,
so
yeah.
It's hard to imagine there's a lot of them,
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, because that would be that would need even more room, right? Yeah, I agree. The context makes it seem like there's just one. But we have a quick clip, don't we?
We do. Yeah, this is in a secular kind of style. It features some biblical scholars of sorts, I want to say. However, it's more of like a National Geographic kind of episode. And I really love the animation that they put together for it. And they drop some truth bombs about these creatures that you don't really hear in, secular, or even when you see biblical scholars discussing these topics. You don't hear much of the end goal, the purpose for these creatures and why were they created. But you'll hear a couple mentions in this, and I hope y'all enjoy it.
There is a treasure trove of strange and mysterious creatures inside a book we've known for thousands of years. The Bible is full of beasts. If we can uncover Behemoth and Leviathan, tradition says we have to eat the monsters.
Oh my God, look how long it is!
To uncover the secrets, we need to decode ancient writings and unlock the hidden meanings inside symbols, myths, and legends. If we succeed, we will come face to face with the most mysterious beasts in the Bible. Two massive monsters are supposed to appear at the end of days, but they don't eat us. We get to eat them. Today, investigators are re-examining ancient biblical texts, uncovering clues that might lead us to the most extraordinary animals. In the earliest commentaries on the Hebrew Bible, rabbis presented a vision of a future feast. According to their predictions, there will be two enormous roast beasts, one taken from land and one from sea, prepared and plopped on the dinner plates at the end of days.
Based on their readings of Hebrew scriptures, the earliest rabbis began to imagine that there would be this spectacular banquet at the end of time that would be hosted for the righteous ones. And on the menu for this banquet would be these two enormous, monstrous creatures, Behemoth and Leviathan.
It's made clear in ancient texts that the righteous will dine on the divine flesh of these creatures. But exactly what are they, and where can they be found?
So when we try to take these biblical texts literally and just look at these monsters, Behemoth and Leviathan, what we find really is a very profound sense of mystery, even unnerving mystery.
In the book of Job, the Bible describes Behemoth as having bones like tubes of bronze, limbs like bars of iron. He can stiffen his tail like a cedar, and he can draw the river Jordan into his mouth.
The behemoth is described in the book of Job as being a large and powerful animal that lives on the rivers of swamp. It's described as being an animal that eats grass and that stiffens his tail like a cedar, and which has a large mouth. What is this animal? Some have suggested that it's referring to a sauropod dinosaur. A sauropod dinosaur, like the famous Brontosaurus, is a large, powerful animal. It lives in the swamp, and it has a tail like a cedar tree.
It's a bizarre theory to suggest that dinosaurs will be eaten by man. But cryptozoologists believe a sauropod could still exist today. There are legends from deep in the Congo that tell of a creature known as Mokole Mbembe. It means the one who stops the flow of rivers.
Intriguingly, cryptozoologists actually know of a story in Central Africa of a dinosaur-like creature. It's called Mokele Mbembe, and these animals seen in the Congo are said to look like a sauropod, a dinosaur that looks like this. It has a big body, a bulbous body, a tail straight out to the back, and a neck that's long. The native peoples have seen this, they talk about it, it's in their history, it's in their native traditions. Many expeditions have gone to Africa. In fact, the Smithsonian was the first organization to send an expedition in 1920 and 21 in search of evidence.
Is it really possible that dinosaurs have remained hidden for millennia deep in the African jungles? Is there a behemoth in the bush, just waiting to be eaten by the righteous at the end of days?
Some of the expeditions, indeed, in the 1960s and 1970s, brought back the story of native villagers who had eaten part of a Mokele Mbembe and died. Now, on all of these expeditions, we keep getting these stories of different kinds of Mokele Mbembe, and another one that we often hear about is represented here in this carving called the Killer of Elephants. This is a native carving of one of these creatures. They're said to have a big body and the straight tail that we keep hearing in the behemoth story. And this may actually help us with a misidentification that could be going on. For indeed, this kind of Mokele Mbembe may be an African version of an unknown species of rhinoceros.
But perhaps it's more reasonable to look at another creature, alive, well known in many rivers today, and fitting most of the ancient descriptions of the behemoth.
It seems that the animal being described is the hippopotamus. The hippopotamus is certainly a large, powerful animal. It eats grass like cattle, and it lives in the swamp.
Could the predicted banquet for the righteous at the end of days really include hippo on a plate? It seems an overly strange surf and turf menu. Before we decide on the turf, let us turn the investigation to the surf, the Leviathan. The book of Isaiah describes the Leviathan as a twisted sea serpent. In the book of Job, it is written that when Leviathan is hungry, he sends forth from his mouth a heat so great as to make all the waters of the deep boil. Terror surrounds his teeth. He makes the mighty afraid and is impenetrable by sword. Some scholars suggest that the ancient texts are referring to a prehistoric plesiosaur existing in the deepest depths of the oceans, unchanged throughout the millennia. But others put forth living creatures that have actually been seen, strange oceanic aliens like the oarfish.
This is an amazing sight. This thing is probably your piece.
Also called the king of herrings, the oarfish is the longest bony fish in the ocean and can reach up to 36 feet in length. Its flesh is of a goopy, gelatinous consistency, and it sports a majestic cardinal red dorsal fin. The oarfish is rarely seen because it frequents depths up to 3,000 feet, and it wasn't until 1996 that an oarfish was filmed alive. But as large as this fish gets, fearsome it is not. The oarfish is toothless, feeds on plankton, and is quite harmless. Not really the apocalyptic sea serpent described in the book of Job. In fact, the deeper we fish the biblical seas in search of clues for Leviathan, the more we discover that the traditions surrounding this creature are contradictory. And if we chase the fish into later Christian tradition, we find that we really aren't fishing for a fish at all.
We see in Jewish tradition how the rabbis imagined that Leviathan was actually a creature of God who would serve a purpose within creation in the end times as the main course for this final banquet. In Christian tradition, it goes in a very different direction. Part of the reason for that is that In the Greek translation of Hebrew scriptures, known as the Septuagint, the proper name Leviathan gets translated into Greek as Drakon. Drakon is simply Greek for what it sounds like, dragon. So Leviathan became a kind of generic dragon.
It seems that Christian writers changed the great serpentfish into a dragon. Leviathan has lost his fins, lost his name, and has gone to the devil. If this is the same dragon, the same Drakon that is Leviathan, then the tasty fish for the God-given banquet has been changed into very unpalatable and satanic monster meat. When it comes to Leviathan and Behemoth, clearly there is a disagreement over the nature and purpose of the negative monsters.
Hey. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. The audio is getting all crazy.
Yeah, it was. It's over. That was the last scene of it.
Okay. Yeah.
That's all right. Can you minimize it?
Yeah. That's something was going off there.
No
But
worries.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved how you put your commentary on top of the film so that people weren't confused to see that this, like you said, this is kind of a worldly documentary. And it's funny because every suspicion or every place they were led to think in their brain was still something that is contradictory to scripture.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. I appreciated that. It reminded me of that verse. We've had a couple discussions about whether there were maybe multiple like smaller Leviathans or several of them. That there was a verse reminded in that it was Job 41. I forget which one, maybe 33, where it said there's nothing on earth like Leviathan, one made without fear. That to me gives credence to the idea that there was only one of them created, but it could be wrong.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm. And also, I like that they were kind of examining it from all angles and looking at the different traditional interpretations. And because they're at the end, they touched on the idea that I do see frequently when these discussions come up, Sean, and in various places on just in discussion about these topics, I'll see a lot of people that really truly believe Leviathan is symbolic for or is just a name of the Satan character, the devil, the dragon. And I think it's interesting that guy pointed out that it was as a result of the Greek translation and the Greek translators choosing the word Drakon, that they conflate it with the dragon in Revelation as the Satan character. But we would say it's definitely two different entities.
That's right. That's right. Yes, Satan character is referenced as the dragon, but that is just the same type of metaphor imposed on someone that's considered evil to an animal that's considered evil, just like Yeshua, who's righteous, is referenced as a spotless lamb, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something that was considered righteous for the sacrifice. So the metaphor is consistent by calling Satan dragon, but that doesn't mean he is the actual Leviathan being referenced in Job 40:41. So
no, nobody's eating angels in the end times. So
no,
we have had one verse that declared that one or both of these will be food in the end times, and then we had that mentioned multiple times in that video there, right? Secular documentary talking about early rabbis, knowing that there would be a banquet in the end times. So let's look at some more scripture, brother.
Yes.
Maybe we can find something that would clarify that concept. We got a skeleton of a massive beast here and a bunch of guys holding up some meat chunks, it looks like. And it says in Job 41, this is the KJV, verse 6, shall the companions make a banquet of him? Shall they part him among the merchants? And in the Septuagint, the same verse, like Sean was saying earlier, is that the verses can be numbered differently in the Septuagint, but it's the same verse saying, and do the nations feed upon him, and the nations of the Phoenicians share him. All right, so feeding on him at a banquet. Sorry.
Yeah, this is going to be great right here because this is the idea of we read on day 5 these things were made. We don't see them now. We speculate where the behemoth is. We're told the Leviathan is under the ground, so we're like, all right, well, why won't they just pop up and interact with mankind? But I don't think they're not supposed to be a part of the regular ecosystem because they're so big, like Second Ezra 6 said, right? Mm-hmm. They're so massive they had to be kind of separated and set apart, and they are both in a physical zoological sense, they're set apart, but also in a spiritual purpose, they're set apart to become food for the nations.
That's right. So that would mean that they're not metaphor for an intangible concept. They're not, they're not representative and symbolic for chaos or anything else that I've seen dozens of interpretations saying that these beings, these beasts are not actual physical creatures. Whereas if they're going to be eaten, then they very much are.
Yeah, and you know why people make those interpretations, right? Because in order to take seriously all these scriptures that we've read means that these concepts, like we've already tried to express it's contradictory to what we're taught about living on a ball in space and the descriptions of that ball and the descriptions of the ground beneath us in that ball model of that evolutionary heliocentric model. And so this stuff only works within the biblical description of the flat circle of Earth with cavernous areas below us and abysses below us and enclosed by a firmament. So yeah, that's where like the logic, they start to immediately have to reinterpret it. Otherwise they have to change their cosmological view.
That's right. It's flat gang, baby. You already know.
That's right.
Second Baruch, the Apocalypse of Baruch, we touched on verse 4 without the ending verse, without the last sentence. We touched on this earlier. We're coming back to it in its fullness. It shall come to pass when all is accomplished that was come to pass in those parts. This is a prophecy about end times, that the Messiah shall then begin to be revealed, right? Our Christ coming back, and the behemoth shall be revealed from his place, and Leviathan shall ascend from the sea. Those two great monsters, which I created on the 5th day of creation, and shall have kept until that time. And then they shall be food for all that are left. All that are left. That's usually a turn of phrase that's used specifically for people left behind. That I would say, Sean, wouldn't you agree that these are people that don't make the first resurrection event, whereas they weren't in covenant with the Father, didn't believe in the Son, maybe, but they weren't destroyed. They weren't killed or taken out during the tribulation period. So they're left as mortal survivors of the nations. This is a group of people that we don't often hear about, right? Mainstream churchianity, so-called, doesn't discuss the three groups of people, because we have the people that are taken out at the coming of his brightness, right? Slain and consumed at our Messiah's coming. The angels come in, take them out. There is the group of people that are raised from the dead, and even those that are alive, that are in covenant and receive the promises of the first resurrection, made immortal, given eternal bodies. John 3:16 moment. But then there is this other group of people that aren't in either category. They didn't deserve the judgment, or they escaped the punishment of the angels and Yeshua coming in and wiping out all the wicked. They didn't deserve that, but they also weren't in covenant. However, whatever that looks like for each individual, Yeshua will be the judge. But this third group of people we don't get mention of very often. But apparently, these creatures we're talking about tonight, Leviathan and Behemoth, will be food for all of those people, mortal survivors of the nations who survived the events of the tribulation.
Yes. Yeah, it's a big day. It's a rough 42 months leading up to an even more rougher big day when Yeshua actually returns, and all the massiveness that happened. Revelation 16:18 says there's an earthquake so massive all the cities of the nations are destroyed, and this is when Yeshua is returning. So there's gonna be a lot of refugees that didn't die throughout all that, and they weren't killed by the beast or the wars or the famines or the plagues, and so they will be seeking food, their most basic necessity.
Yeah,
so
they'll need refuge.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? The Father loves people, even people that don't know him and don't show love to him. He loves them so much, he created massive food sources for them on day 5 before they were even created.
And a big part of one of the weightier matters of his law is to tend to take care of the widows and the fatherless. And I can only imagine there will be a lot of those on this day.
Especially if
yeah, that's right.
There are lots of widows and orphans. And he goes on to say in 2 Ezra 6:49-52, you kept 2 living creatures in reserve. One you named Behemoth, the second you named Leviathan. You separated them from each other, for the 7th part where the waters was gathered couldn't contain them. You gave Behemoth one part of the land that had been dried on the 3rd day, where there are 1,000 mountains, so that he might live there. And to Leviathan, however, you gave the watery 7th part. You kept them to be eaten by whomever you wish and whenever you wish.
There it is. There's the final statement of that verse that we didn't cover earlier. And yeah, again, here it says, Sean, that there's 2 living creatures, one Behemoth, one Leviathan. So
It's true.
That to me lends to
It's
the
just
idea
one
there's
of
only
each.
one of each. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
But
clearly, here's the other thing. They clearly have a different lifespan than a normal huge ox or a hippo or all the other things speculated in that video we saw, right? Because
at
they've
least
been
6,000 to
alive this whole
7,000
time.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're right. So I don't know of normal cattle that lives that long. So clearly these two were created for a special purpose.
Yeah. And preserved just as much. But yep, that's the concluding statement we left off there earlier. But Enoch, chapter 58, it might be chapter 60 if you're looking at the R.H. Charles version. I think this is mostly the Richard Lawrence we're looking at tonight on this one. But then Holy Michael said to me, "Why are you disturbed at this vision? Hitherto has existed the day of mercy, and he has been merciful and long-suffering towards all who dwell upon the earth." Yes, he has. Amen. "But when the time shall come, then shall the power, the punishment, and the judgment take place, which the Lord of spirits has prepared for those who prostrate themselves to the judgment of righteousness, for those who abjure that judgment, and for those who take his name in vain." Big day.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a big day. It makes me wonder if I'm looking at this picture here on the right, and I'm starting to think of like, what if the behemoth was put in like some sort of inner earth area? But then I'm like, no, I don't see any other place in scripture that talks about an inner earth livable space, below the land that was called the earth, right? Below the circle of the earth that we live on. The only thing that we see described below us is compartments of Sheol, of an abyss with cavernous areas. So
if he lived somewhere with 1,000 mountains on this earth plane, then he could just as easily be hidden up inside of a mountain. Maybe he burrowed or something.
Yeah, or it just could be one of the land masses that is out there, but we're just not allowed to go explore because of the current suppression of the world governments for restricting, maritime travel.
Very well could be. Let's look at what else Enoch has to say, because he'll talk about the location of the behemoth at that time, at least. But that day has been prepared, the day of the Lord, the day of judgment, as we were just reading. It's been prepared for the elect as a day of covenant. We would argue that this is when the new covenant is inaugurated for mortals to enter into as they achieve immortality, or are given that immortality, I should say. And for sinners, a day of inquisition. In that day shall be distributed for food 2 monsters, a female monster whose name is Leviathan, dwelling in the depths of the sea above the springs of waters, and a male monster whose name is Behemoth, which possesses, moving on his breast, the invisible wilderness.
All right.
Would you take the next passage from this chapter? Go ahead.
Sure. So then Enoch 58, 9-10 in this translation says that named Dindayan, the wilderness is named Dindayan, in the east of the garden, where the elect and the righteous will dwell, where he received it from my ancestor, who was man, from Adam the first of men, whom the Lord of the spirits made. And then I asked of another angel to show me the power of those monsters, how they became separated on the same day, one being in the depths of the sea and one in the dry desert.
Okay. Dry desert. And in the, what is it, in Dindayan or Duiduane? I said Duduane earlier, in the east of the garden. We'll come back to that. I'll put an asterisk on it because there's that commentary I mentioned earlier, but I think that's after a couple slides from now.
All right.
Read this one, please, sir.
And then Enoch 58, 11-12 says, and he said, you, son of man, are here desirous of understanding secret things. And the angel of peace was with me, said, these 2 monsters are by the power of God prepared to become food, that the punishment of God may not be in vain.
Okay. Another mention of them prepared and reserved to be food. All right.
That's right.
They're going to be eaten. They're not eating anybody that we know of, but they will be eaten.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I don't know how they're going to come up to reveal themselves, like Second Ezra's talked about. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but all I know is that when they hear it's time to come up and reveal themselves to mankind, they do. So even after all these years, they're going to be obedient at the right moment when they're supposed to be obedient because God calls them.
Yeah. So that and they'll probably have the angel or angels, arousing them, getting them out of their hiding spots.
Interesting.
Very well could be. What else is another one?
So did you want to? No. Did you have commentary on this you want to talk about?
Yeah. So if we can go back to that next slide, right? Dindayan. The next one. It says in the east of the garden. My bad.
This is it, right? Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it, but I think it's 2 slides over. It was the next slide after Enoch, where there's commentary on this.
Oh, okay, my
There
bad.
it is. That one. Yeah, you're good. So commentary note on Enoch 58:9. Duidain, Dindain, the land of Naid, they put after LXX, Naid in Genesis 4:16. So Genesis 4:16 says, then Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden.
Interesting.
Septuagint, land of Nod, but if you look there at the Greek, it's Naid, which the person that put this commentary, they're connecting it to that same place, starting it with a D. And I do think it's interesting that it says east of Eden, because that's exactly, however, the way it's worded in Enoch, it seems to be in the east of the garden, as if it's in it. But the land of Nod, if it is the same place, it's outside of it.
Right.
So there might be, just some wording in the way it was translated in Enoch, or this might not be the same exact place, but I would say it seems like it.
Yeah, it does. I mean, when you're matching up the Hebrew words like that, it kind of does. And again, this is where it does get tricky for people, because these things have been translated from other languages, and we put so much inherent trust in the translator,
Yeah.
And so this is where I'm always trying to encourage people to look for context. I would say this is a wonderful example of finding the context of something where the same word is used in multiple contexts, also with the same geographical location. So to me, I think this is a good find, brother.
Cool. Yeah. Very well could be very strong connection there, east of the garden, maybe outside of it, of where the garden was placed. But thank you, I appreciate it. What else did we have?
So we have Leviticus 11. And I think we wanted to talk about the actual nature of the animals being eaten.
That's right. So let's preface this by saying, if it is, we've shown for multiple verses now that they were created to be food. That's their purpose. For the righteous survivors of the nations, those that are judged to survive the destruction of the day of the Lord, the wrath of the Lord, right? And so if they're prepared by God, created by God from the beginning, we know that Psalm 119, 160, in some translations it'll use the word laws, other ones it'll say ordinances, but the sum of your word is truth, and every one of your laws are eternal, is what one translation of that will say. And so if God's law, a lot of people will say, Sean, that God didn't intend for mankind to eat animals. Even another group would say that God gave Adam and everybody, like before Noah, all the animals to eat, and then he decided some of them are clean and unclean. But we would say that God's law is the same, eternal. He does not change.
Since day one. Yeah, it's the same. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that people need to look up the Greek in Genesis 1, 29 and 30, and you're going to see that the English translation, they've actually inserted words, and it seems like that God is talking to first Adam and then the animals, talking about what they can eat, but it's not. It's just, he's still talking to Adam the whole time. He's just telling him, like, I've give you all the green herbs, the trees, the fruit, and the seed-bearing trees and things. And then he says, and all the animals, the winged animals, the land animals, the flying insects. And then, of course, we get the greater description, just like a ton of examples in Scripture where God will mention something in one passage briefly, but then later he actually expounds with great, great depth. And that's what we get, Wes, in Leviticus 11 is a great explanation of the specified animals and why they're specified as clean and unclean. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Leviticus 11, 2-4 starts off with, speak to the sons of Israel, saying, these are the creatures which you may eat from, all the animals that are on the earth, whatever divides a hoof, thus making split hooves, and choose the cud among the animals that you may eat. Nevertheless, you are not to eat of these among those which chew the cud, or among those which divide the hoof, the camel. For though it chews cud, it does not divide the hoof, it is unclean to you. That same passage goes on to list rabbits, pigs. If you were unaware, it is an eternal commandment of the Father for his people to not eat pork, pig. Right? That's right. Unclean because even though it splits the hoof, it divides the hoof, it does not chew the cud. There's that. So this would be, part of his eternal instructions for dietary rules that he has. And so he's not going to create something that splits the hoof but doesn't chew the cud and say, here, I'm going to feed people with this. He doesn't. Right. He's not going to feed anybody with a hippopotamus or an elephant or a crocodile or any kind of reptilian lizard like dinosaur creature, because none of those match the specifications for what God said is food. It's food.
So in Isaiah 2:2-5, Yahweh is expressing through Isaiah that when in the last days Zion will be made chief of the mountains of the earth, all the nations will stream to the mountain of the Lord, and from there they will learn his ways, and he will judge amongst the nations. Obviously, he's going to do this through his son, Yeshua, King of Kings. And then it says that the law will go forth from Zion, right? So this is, if all the nations are going to go forward and to the New Jerusalem and actually learn his ways, he's not, the moment they get there, he's not going to show up and disregard his ways by giving them unclean food. So,
correct. That's right.
Yeah. So do you want this one?
Yeah, sure. Oh, well, I read the last one. You do this one.
All right. So in Leviticus 11:9-12, it says, "These you may eat, whatever is in the water, all that have fins and scales, those in the water, in the seas or in the rivers, you may eat. But whatever is in the seas and in the rivers that does not have fins and scales, among all the teeming life of the water, and among all the living creatures that are in the water, they are detestable things to you, and they shall be abhorrent to you. You may not eat of their flesh, and their carcasses you shall detest. Whatever in the water does not have fins and scales is abhorrent to you."
There we go. So we know Leviathan is a water creature, a sea serpent, sea monster of sorts. That would mean that if God created him to be food for people, then he would have to have both fins and scales. We see plenty of times in Job, we saw that he has like a double mailed armor, right? His scales are mentioned there. And so if he's able to swim, then he would have to have some fins too.
Yep. Yeah, he would definitely be clean, in my opinion.
All right. But Matthew 22:1-4, I threw this in here just because, a lot of people say that, God, didn't intend, like I said earlier, didn't intend originally for mankind to eat animals, but then because of sin and the fall, he made it to where, you can eat some of them, but that these were just recommendations. But we're here to say that for every feast, there was a prescription of a slain animal that was required on the altar of God at the temple by his ordained priesthood. We obviously don't have those things now. We will when the millennial reign comes again, when the New Jerusalem temple of God descends down and dwells among us. But a lot of people think that we're going to go back to Eden in the sense of when we go to heaven, when heaven comes to us, that we're going to return to this vegetarian diet. Some people believe that we'll have these wispy, ethereal, spiritual bodies that aren't capable of eating at all and that we will never need to eat. But we're here to say the feasts are eternal. They're kept in heaven. The angels, the angelic priesthood kept them. Our Messiah is a high priest, our high priest that ministers in the heavenly tabernacle, according to Hebrews 8, where he has to perform the same duties that priests did on the earth and in the true tabernacle above. And so all this gives credence to the idea that, yes, the feast will be carried out in heaven. And here Jesus is saying, Jesus spoke to them again in parables, saying the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. And he sent out his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding feast. And they were unwilling to come. And he sent out other servants, right, saying, tell those who have been invited, behold, I have prepared my dinner. My oxen and my fattened livestock are all butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. So we know that the inauguration covenant meal for the new covenant in the kingdom is called the wedding feast of the Lamb. Jeremiah in the Septuagint happens to call that day a Passover. We don't know which one or on which specific calendar, but we know it is a Passover, the wedding feast of the Lamb. And Jesus says that the kingdom is like this. Behold, a fattened livestock and oxen are butchered and prepared, and everything is ready for the wedding feast. Beautiful. I'm excited for it. Oh, Sean, I can't hear you.
And I know that I just want to say real quick, in case anyone is not familiar with my channel, where we've talked about the idea of this in great depth about how what do the angels, the Father and the Son, actually do in heaven? Do they eat food? Now we're told in Psalms that the manna that rained down on the Israelites was the bread of angels directly from heaven. So this wasn't something that he just manifested in the upper atmosphere above the land of the earth and then dropped down. Supposedly it was the bread of angels that was given to the Israelites in the wilderness. We also see in 2nd Baruch that apparently that's going to be coming back, and that's going to be given again to mankind. But as far as this particular wedding feast in the kingdom of heaven, that's the part where, Wes, I've seen people try to argue this away, and they'll try to say, oh, well, this is the millennial time on the earth. This isn't actually within This isn't above in heaven. And that's, to me, that shows immediately their misunderstanding of what the kingdom of heaven is, because it's the new Jerusalem that comes down to the earth. So it's the enclosed area of the kingdom of God that comes down from the firmament, through the sky, down to touch and sit down on the earth between the Euphrates and the Nile, the land promised to Abraham in the covenant. That is the kingdom of heaven. And this feast is taking place inside of that kingdom with Yeshua and the resurrected saints. So to me, it's like the details are so, like, you would have to just immediately say that Yeshua is giving inaccurate resurrection kingdom theology in his parable to try to explain all these details away. And to me, I'm just not prepared to do that personally. I think that he was the ultimate teacher and he had truth and everything he said was true. And so I think he's teaching us true details of what we are to expect after we're resurrected. And when we go inside the New Jerusalem as a part of our inheritance, and that is mentioned directly in Isaiah 54:17 and Revelation 21, 1 through 7. So as a result of that, we get there and we have this wedding feast, and yes, there are animals made. So the reason I say this, Wes, is because so many people have been taught with poor teachings in churches that the sacrifices are a horrible thing. And so they just don't realize that that word for sacrifices is simply the same animals, in most cases, a lot of cases, the same animals we see used in this wedding feast. It's just a meal that's prepared between you and the Father, right? And there's a priest involved. He's your cook. And so you mentioned the high priest Yeshua, as we're told in Hebrews 8, 1 through 5, that he actually is ministering with gifts and sacrifices in the heavenly temple right now. That means if he's making a sin offering, he's going to eat part of that sin offering, just like the Torah instructs, right? Just like the law instructs for a priest to do in a temple with an animal he brings forward to make a propitiatory meal between him and Father on behalf of mankind. So the idea of a sacrifice, it shouldn't be a scary thing, and it shouldn't be some evil thing. That's the enemy twisting the words of the Father. All this is literally you having a meal with your Father, and he just wants it cooked in a certain way by a certain guy with a certain recipe, and so to me, it baffles me. It breaks my heart, and it baffles me that people vilify the idea of that the Father created us and behaves like us by preparing a meal from an animal. And to me, it's like it's some of the modern deception of ancient India that has been pushed. Actually, I say ancient India; it's actually ancient Babylon from many of the nations involved, because even the Egyptians were also eating in like a vegetarian style diet during some of their kingdom and during their old kingdom back in the day. So I think it's fascinating, though, that we have this resurgence in our modern time of this out of context vilifying of the idea of these priests making a meal to God to create peace and atonement, versus the mistreatment of animals, or how somehow it's evil to eat an animal. It's not. It's the way he created things and said it was good. It's why he said some animals you're for eating, some are not for eating, right? So he understood what he made. And it breaks my heart that even in the church, people have been deceived to think that what Yeshua is doing for them right now in heaven above is somehow evil. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's basically just shows you when people haven't truly read their Bibles. So I just hope to encourage anyone in the audience, guys, doing the Father making it like Isaiah 56:7, Yahweh tells us through Isaiah, like on his holy mountain, righteous sacrifices and burnt offerings will be accepted. That means meals brought before him for atonement and peace will be accepted. He's going to delight in them.
Now that I know enough and I've been taught and understand more of this, it does break my heart as well to see it vilified, especially because it is the process that God created to provide atonement through his priesthood at a temple that he chooses. It's not something evil. It's something good for everything, for everybody that is involved in that process, because he wants to make a way to, rectify our transgressions and to make us clean through them.
And it's not something strange. Like it's you understand this principle in your everyday life. Like if you're trying to get a business deal done, you may take them out to dinner and have a meal with them, right? Yeah, to create that bond and that fellowship, to reconcile with your dad that you may have been estranged and mad at him with for 5 years. Well, you might meet him at a restaurant and have a bonding meal to repair that relationship.
Like a covenant meal. That's right. And it's ingrained in our fabric of our being and our nature to want to have that, right? Families are known for, on their days that they celebrate for whatever occasions, they want to get together for a meal, because that is how the Creator designed us to want to have that So it's a beautiful thing, guys. Beautiful process. And the Father definitely dispels and debunks the idea that he intends for mankind to either only eat vegetables and plants. This whole topic of the Leviathan and Behemoth and their purpose, the end time goal of them providing nourishment and sustenance of refuge for the survivors of the nations. That dispels the idea of veganism and the returning to Eden diet, of this idea that we got to stay away from meats because it's not how he designed it. There's over 30 verses where he says that the burnt offerings and the sacrifices on his altar were sweet smelling, savory aromas, that he liked the way it smells. He's not just saying that and then like going to turn around and say, no, those are bad for you. And don't do any of that.
Yeah. And I try to remind people that Jubilee 6 tells us that the angels in heaven have been keeping the feast of Shavuot since creation began. And that feasts include eating a meal as a part of the atonement sacrifices that were made by the priesthood. So and they're bringing forth their first fruits. It's the feast of first fruits, which we see in Genesis 4 and Deuteronomy 21 and other places, that these first fruits include animals and produce. And that clearly here's the kingdom of heaven where the resurrected saints are in our passage on screen, where there is animals that are being used for a feast. So this is completely complete continuity throughout the entirety of scriptures, is that the Father has livable area above us. We try to go over this in episode 1 and other episodes about the multiple layers of the firmament where the angels themselves live above. And as a result, they have life too, guys. Like, they're not all sent to the earth all at the same time all the time. Like, there's only a few of them sent every now and then for purposes that they have. I don't know if they have some sort of rotation up there or how they do that. But the point is, they like that when it means the ones that aren't sent at that time, they're still living up there. What are they doing? They have houses. Enoch saw them. They have land. There's mountains. There's rivers. There's trees. I'm sure they do agriculture, agrarian society. They grow things so they can bring their first fruits in. They're probably shepherds over sheep and goats and cattle. Like, it's like
there's got to be somebody raising the flocks.
Yes,
to go up on the altar. Yeah,
it's
there's
the
a whole
life that we're taught.
That's right. There's a whole physical, tangible reality above the firmament. Hey, Wendy Moore has a question. What happens to the waters above when the firmament opens like a scroll? What would be your answer to that?
I would say it's in Revelation 21, 1-2, where it talks about there's no more sea. Right, so that word in the Greek is kainos, a refashioned heaven, and a refashioned earth. It's the piece of land, the New Jerusalem coming down out of the firmament that's been rolled open, and the waters that were above it says there's no more sea. Now, and we have the Testament of Levi, chapter 3. As Levi is getting this vision, he sees that there's a great sea suspended in the second area above the first firmament, basically, and so that's where I would say that he was seeing the waters that are still above the firmament in Psalm 148:4, and then that is going to go away, whether it just drains down to the side or whether it, some of it falls down again. It's not the same amount, no matter what it is, it's not going to come down and flood the earth again. We know that, right? But it's definitely moved. It's refashioned, right? So this is why I always try to stress that Greek word kainos, which is different from neos. Neos in the Greek is a word that means brand new, never existed, whereas kainos is something that existed but's been remade, re-enhanced, refashioned, redesigned. So that's where when the firmaments roll up like a scroll so the New Jerusalem can descend, that new earth that's coming down, that new piece of land, then that's where it's going to move the sea out of the way. And I don't know if it's probably just going to drain to the side, in my opinion. Oh, you're on mute, brother. I don't know what happened.
Hope that was a decent answer for you, Miss Wendy. Thank you. Enjoyed it. Absolutely. Hey, what was after this slide, if you don't mind?
So we got
some commentary.
Quotes.
Yeah. Got to run through it. We're already at 2 hours. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. Hope you don't mind. We'll run a little late tonight. But this was just, I found in some commentary that Leviathan is prominent in the Haggadic literature in connection with the advent of the Messiah, referring to Job 41:30, and the pious ones shall make a banquet of it. And that's an interesting translation. I couldn't find that translation, actually. The pious ones shall make a banquet of it. Anyways, our Johanan, says that at the time of the resurrection, a banquet will be given by God to the righteous, at which the flesh of the Leviathan will be served. Even the hunting of the Leviathan will be a source of great enjoyment to the righteous. We would say that if they're thinking the righteous are, resurrected saints or people, we seem to see from the scriptures that it's the angels who are charged to take
They're
care,
also
look
called
after
righteous.
that. They are. That's right. Yeah. Would you read this one?
So this goes on to say, and Gabriel will be charged with the killing of the monster, but he will not be able to accomplish his task without the help of God, who will divide the monster with his sword. According to another Haggadah, when Gabriel fails, God will order the Leviathan to engage in a battle with the ox of the mountain, the Shor Habar, which will result in death to both of them. Not only will the flesh of the Leviathan furnish food for the table of the righteous, but there will be great supply of it in the markets of Jerusalem.
All right. Interesting.
Yeah.
I like that they said that the ox of the mountain, they referred to Behemoth as.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
And just for the viewer again, where's this info coming from?
Oh, these are just, like it said, Haggadic literature. These are rabbis or early rabbis. I didn't have a citation necessarily for each of these quotes. It was just something I found written where these guys were quoting some rabbis.
They were talking about Leviathan and Behemoth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just commentary, guys, right? Not inspired scripture necessarily. We can't take every word of theirs as fact, but these are some of the legends held in their traditions, which I thought was interesting to pair with it. From the hide of the Leviathan, God will make tents for the pious of the first rank, girdles for those of the second, chains for those of the third, and necklaces for those of the fourth. The remainder of the hide will be spread on the walls of Jerusalem, and the whole world will be illuminated by its brightness. So earlier we read that the Leviathan has eyes like the morning, could mean that it's bright eyes, right? He has shiny eyes. Apparently, maybe his skin could also be bioluminescent, like some of the creatures of the deep, right? We see when we're looking at deep oceanic creatures and life that oftentimes they can produce their own light because of how deep in the darkness of the waters they are. So that'd be cool if he was shiny and the skin of him was used for something, right? Maybe make some sukkahs.
Yeah. I think they showed that kind of imagery in the King Kong movie where he goes radioactive and he starts glowing from the inside out.
No way, I didn't catch that. Yeah.
It's interesting. So it goes on to say, the Holy One, blessed be he, will in time to come make a banquet for the righteous from the flesh of Leviathan. For it is said, companions will make a banquet of it. The Holy One, blessed be he, will in time to come make a tabernacle for the righteous from the skin of Leviathan. For it said, can you fill tabernacles with the skin? The rest of Leviathan. I don't know.
That it seems to me he was quoting a scripture there, because when the last time he said, for it is said, companions will make a banquet of it, we find that in Job. So that's the other reason I like looking at the commentary, because you never know what scriptures they had available to them or what versions of the scriptures and what those said at the time when this commentary was written. So I don't know of a verse that says, can you fill the tabernacles with his skin? Do you?
I don't. We may have to check the Septuagint again in Job 40 and 41,
Yeah.
I don't remember it off the top of my head. But he goes on to say that the rest of Leviathan will be spread by the Holy One. Blessed be he upon the walls of Jerusalem, and its splendor will shine from one end of the world to the other, as it is said, and the nations shall walk at your light, and kings at the brightness of your rising.
From the tractate Baba Batra, one of those old rabbis.
Interesting.
Thank you for letting us check that out. I thought this was one of the most interesting of the commentary I found on it. It is customary to recite a prayer at the conclusion of Sukkot that speaks of Leviathan. So apparently, like in Judaism, there's a legend or a customary prayer that they'll pray at the Feast of Tabernacles, as it's called, Sukkot. May it be your will, Lord, our God, and God of our forefathers, that just as I have fulfilled and dwelt in this Sukkah, so may I merit in the coming year to dwell in the Sukkah of the skin of Leviathan next year in Jerusalem.
That's interesting. Now I don't know if this is true or not, but from my speculation, as far as the timing of the return of the Lord around Passover, and then the Passover and unleavened bread feast happening, and then the several months, like the 3 to 4 months it's going to take all the survivors of the nations to travel to the New Jerusalem, that would make sense if suddenly by the time they get there, it's the end of Sukkot, which is the last great day of the 8th day of Sukkot, which is the great ingathering, the feast of ingathering. All the nations are ingathering to Jerusalem to be saved and to be fed. That would make sense to me that on their way there, they're sustained by the manna that falls again from heaven.
Very much so. I'm reminded of Zechariah 14, verse 16, where it's talking about that the surrounding nations dwelling outside of the kingdom during the millennial reign, where there's still mortals, that these nations are commanded to come and celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, or else their nation doesn't get rain and stuff like that. Whereas part of the commandment for celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles is that you got to dwell in a tent for 7 days, right? 8 days. And so that would be awesome of the Father to provide the tents. Especially if he's got this massive slain, potentially 300-mile long sea serpent that he's slain to not only be cut up and portioned out for food, but if he's, what's the word? If he's material resourceful, then he's going to make use of the skin too. That would just be an amazing part of his plan. I'd love to see that come to fruition if this is true.
I watch a lot of videos that talk about like tiny homes and repurposed homes, and they always mention like, oh, these cabinets are repurposed wood from this and that, and I'm just laughing, and I'm like, yeah, the Father's going to repurpose some Leviathan for a whole bunch of things. It seems like, if these statements are true, right? It's amazing,
right? Some Leviathan fillets and some behemoth sirloin, some strip steak off that behemoth. Man, I wonder if anybody else will get to eat some. I want to at least try some. I'm gonna pop up at the banquet. Hey guys, just got resurrected. Can I try?
Yeah.
Can I check it out?
Yeah, we already had our meal, but I just want to stop out here, see how you guys are doing. You gonna eat all that? You gonna eat all that?
I don't mean to be greedy. It's just a taste.
Yeah,
Give
they're
me a
like,
bite. Y'all
it's
eat.
not fair. You know, your stomach process is better than ours. You got a glorified body. You're just like, yeah, let me see some of that. Let me share with a brother. So this is do you want this last part here?
Sure, last one. At the end of Shavuot, the commemoration, Shavuot is Pentecost, as we see in Acts 2, nothing new. The commemoration of the reception of the Torah, Jews recite the Akdamut prayer, which, among other things, states that Leviathan and Behemoth will engage in a fierce battle, but God will slay them both with his mighty sword. Well, I don't see anything in the text, right, of the scriptures that necessarily points out that they're going to fight each other.
Yeah, I don't either.
But there's a couple things that indicates that it's a possibility. I'm not going to rule it out completely. I don't necessarily see it and can't pin it down in the scriptures. But I want to say, what if, right? And so earlier I mentioned, Sean, that go ahead. What were you going to say?
It's what all other alpha beasts do when they get in proximity with each other.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me too. Somebody, I think it was Yaakov Netzarim, mentioned earlier that the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is an ox, which would correlate to the idea that the first of the fleshly creations were Behemoth and Leviathan. That's cool. I love how he's got layered truth into it. But I did want to say, right, I mentioned earlier that we wanted to do a giveaway. Here we are coming up on the end of the episode. I'd like to announce another raffle of sorts, a sweepstakes where you guys can win. Now, last time we did one of these early at the beginning of the season, we made it available to the Patreon members, right? We took a drawing from the Patreon, and I love and appreciate all the support that we get from those guys. Thank you. I wanted to also give a chance to some of the followers and people that enjoy what we do. Maybe for whatever reason they can't join the Patreon, aren't able to, and I wanted to make a giveaway available to those people. So listen carefully to the instructions. Now, would you pull up that slide that says who would win?
For sure.
Thank you kindly. So based on that little piece of commentary and this concept, this idea, right? We get all the monster movies growing up in the world of monster movies that we see often in Hollywood. And you see these two massive beasts fighting it out. So I just want to ask the crowd, who would win? Now, before you start blowing up the comments in the live chat, here's what I'd like to instruct you to do to be able to enter into this raffle drawing. Wait till the video's over, or I think you could even exit out of the live chat and leave a comment on the video. Either way, you might wait till the video's over to make sure the comment sticks. I want you to put who you think would win. Just type a one-word comment, either Leviathan or Behemoth. If you put that down, at the end of it, we're going to tally up whoever wins, whichever winning team has the most votes. We're going to pull from that winning team. We're going to draw a random name and give away some uncommon swag, right? Some uncommon ground merch, maybe a shirt, maybe we'll do a shirt. Might throw in something else too. We'll see, but definitely got to do a Teespring shirt to provide some support to those who support us. So after the video's over, leave a comment on the video, not in the live chat, but put Leviathan or Behemoth, who you think would win in a fight. That will hopefully boost the algorithms to get the show some play, as well as give you guys a chance to win a t-shirt. If you've already gotten one from the Patreon. If you're a Patreon member, you might let somebody who's not a Patreon enter into the sweepstakes, but I'm not going to tell you you can't. Nonetheless, I hope that was
I like it.
Cool.
I'll enter mine in after it's over.
Already. Right on. Yeah, we'll draw a name for it here in 2 weeks. We're gonna miss y'all next week, but we're gonna take a week break and then we're gonna come back. We're gonna have a special guest, as we often like to do. We like to have musical guests. We like to have believers on, and we're looking to get some other guests. But we have a guest that isn't necessarily 100% on board with and siding with the biblical creation cosmological model that scriptures detail, although he is a excellent shepherd of the word and a shepherd of congregation even. But what do you have to say about this gentleman?
I'm excited. It's going to be a fun conversation. I know that he got to be teased with the biblical cosmological model when he came on one of my shows about a year and a half ago, and we were reviewing the Testament of Levi. And so we got to tease this idea of some of Levi's vision by the angel seeing multiple layers of firmament. And he definitely was contemplating what's up with this. And I think he's a great brother. He's not condemning about it. And I think he is actually studying it out right now. So this will be a good time to give him some more information.
I think so too. Yeah, the gentleman was also on a roundtable discussion that Sean and I did on, I guess it was on Kingdom in Context. I don't remember if it was Kingdom Cast, but it was called 5 Reasons to Avoid Flat Earth, right? And he was kind of a surprise guest on that. But nonetheless, yeah, he actually made a post recently where he was saying, I've been running into so many intelligent, kind or something, flat earthers, he said, that I think Yah is trying to tell me something. Did you see that post he made?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to maybe a chance to drop some seeds for him, right? And to share some of why we believe what we believe with him. Looking forward to getting his testimony. He said that he's never been asked to deliver his testimony on a show or something before. So that'll be great. I'm honored to have him do so for the first time with us. And that guest will be Matthew Jansen. So do we have anything else for the end of the show tonight?
Not that I can think of. I just appreciate everybody being here and being live in the chat. Looks like we had at one point like 170 people in the chat. So that's pretty awesome.
That was a big show.
It was, yeah. I'm excited, and this is always just so much fun to do. And tonight's topic, I mean, my goodness, just talk about like think about all the programming of the kaijus and the Godzilla movies and the Pacific Rim movies, and how many like dragon movies they've made that, you know, this massive dragon comes out, like there's so much predictive programming for something like this. It's just amazing that the enemy knows exactly what this is. And I make this statement every now and then, and I think it's like the enemy believes the Bible more than a lot of believers. It's baffling to me.
He would have to find out subtle and crafty, clever ways to be able to get people to disbelieve it, right? He's got to know the truth to formulate the lie, I think.
Yeah, if you don't believe that if you don't believe what the Bible claims is a reality, there's no reason to get people to not believe it by deception. You know, it just doesn't make sense. You wouldn't even address it. If you knew it was fake, you wouldn't even address it. You wouldn't have to attack it and get people to believe and twist it all the time. So like the enemy knows this stuff is legit, and they're, in my opinion, secret levels of nations and military projects, they're preparing for this. They're trying to prepare. They won't be able to, but they're trying to prepare for these events that we've been talking about. So yeah, I think this is really interesting information that not only could lead people to a better understanding of biblical cosmology, but also eschatology, the prophecy, return of Yeshua. So it's a really important topic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I was in elementary grade school, I was all over the Pokemon and the Digimon and the Yu-Gi-Oh and the different, characters that she had like that, of all the little beasts and creatures. Yeah. And so if I would have been introduced, I know, and I was huge into dinosaurs, right? Before when in grade school, I wanted to be a paleontologist, I thought. And so it would just have been fascinating if somebody could have presented the topic of the Leviathan and Behemoth as thoroughly as we did tonight. So you never know who this could reach in this world that we grow up in, monster movies and superheroes and stuff. So if this would be something you enjoyed and you want to share it with others, you might be able to reach somebody to at least gain some attention for them into scriptural concepts and the things of God, because this is fascinating stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks to all those in the chat. Thank you to our moderators. Thank you to all our supporters. There will be links to our new Teespring store in the description of the video. There's already a link to Cashapp, PayPal, Patreon, options and ways you can support us. If you like what we're doing, share it, like it, subscribe it, but most of all, bless the Father, and may he bless you. We're going to end off with a song called Walk Like Enoch.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. For through faith the worlds were formed by you. That is something we all cannot do. But by grace you give to men new hearts. Oh, and make us to do a little part. I wanna walk like Enoch walked. I wanna be a man of faith. I wanna walk like Enoch walked and listen to all that you say. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, we are strangers in this pilgrim land, whether for a few years or 100. But by faith we see your promise.